This is Akashvani. In the program Money Talk, now we bring you a discussion on India's achievements towards Sustainable Development Goals of poverty reduction. The participants are Anil Padmanabhan, economic analyst, and Rajesh Lake, anchor.
Anil, the figures available says that 24.82 crore people escaped multidimensional poverty in the last 9 years. And the findings of Niti Aayog's discussion paper, Multidimensional Poverty in India since 2005 and 6, give credit for this remarkable achievement to significant initiatives of the government to address all dimensions of poverty between 2013-14 to 2022-23. Would you please elaborate on the initiatives of the government which address the dimensions of the poverty?
Sure, Rajesh. See, the thing is that poverty can be measured in two forms. One is the income poverty and the other is the multidimensional poverty which you're referring to. Now, the problem with the former is that it's very difficult to ascertain because India doesn't measure income and it measures only consumption. The advantage of the latter, the multidimensional poverty, is that it looks at poverty in a more holistic sense. Often the problem about poverty is access to basic services, whether it is education, whether it is drinking water, electricity, and so on. So what we have discovered in this new paper from Niti Aayog is that it has confirmed what has been known for some time. First, the UNDP had come out with this estimate using the same multidimensional poverty estimates. And later, the Niti Aayog study also confirmed it. Now they have updated it because they've got a new set of data. The National Family Health Survey, which is the fifth and sixth, the fifth has come out. So they've updated the data with that and come out with the new numbers. So essentially, to go back to your questions, I just gave a background so our listeners comprehend the import of what we are talking about today. Because in the last 10 years particularly, access to services like banking, electricity, cooking gas, drinking water recently have grown very rapidly, and in some they're at saturation levels. So this is one key reason why the poverty has declined, the head count of poverty. Because the intensity of poverty has shrunk because of access to services. So in a nutshell, that is the reason why we have seen this reduction in poverty. And once again, it's confirming what we have already known.
And also, India is likely to achieve its SDG target of halving multidimensional poverty, which you mentioned a while back, well before 2030, Anil. And the government's persistent dedication and resolute commitment to enhancing the lives of the most vulnerable and deprived have been instrumental in this accomplishment. So how has India implemented strategies to reduce the percentage of people living in poverty, and what key initiatives have contributed to this progress?
Sure, Rajesh. See, the big takeaway from this report is that they are saying multidimensional poverty will come down to single digits. It's now at 14.96%. So they're saying it'll come down to single digits in this next fiscal year. That is a huge thing. Now, the SDG goals which you're talking about required India to reduce poverty to these targets in 2030. Now, what India has done is by ramping up access to all these services in a very dramatic manner, it is able to shrink this level of poverty much faster than what people thought. To give you an example, let's take banking. Access to banking in, say, 2010, 500 million people didn't have a bank account. Today, they all have a bank account. And according to the Bank for International Settlements, which is the banker of central banks based out of Geneva, according to them, normally it would take a country 47 years to achieve this. So India managed it in 10 years. So that is one way of understanding how India managed to shrink these deadlines so dramatically. And finally, all this was made possible largely due to the digital public infrastructure that India has developed based on the Aadhaar. So Aadhaar was used along with an individual's mobile and their bank account to create a kind of economic GPS to identify the beneficiary. So it became relatively easy for the government to target welfare spending and made sure the right person got the welfare spending. Previously, a lot of the money used to get leaked. Various reasons. inefficiency, corruption, etc. But in the last 3 years, the government has saved 2.75 lakh crore to the national exchequer. That's the saving in leakages. So twofold gains. One, you target the beneficiary. Second, you save the exchequer enormous money in leakages. So pull all these together, you kind of understand how India managed this dramatic makeover in such a short span of time.
In all this, Anil, I feel that the government collaborated with non-governmental organizations and international entities to address poverty-related challenges and achieve the Sustainable Development Goal. So would you elaborate on that aspect as well?
Yes, Rajesh, that's true. India has worked closely with the UNDP, which I told you earlier was the first to get off the blocks and make this point that India had pulled off a dramatic feat, lifting over 400 million people out of poverty in a span of 15 years. So they worked with UNDP. On the other side, on the digital public infrastructure I mentioned about, it has worked with these non-profit technology evangelical who are, one is iSpurt based out of Bangalore. There are a bunch of techies who have come together who have been working behind the scenes. They have collaborated on record, off the record with the UIDAI to create Aadhaar and subsequently UPI and subsequently various other digital public infrastructure, including CoWIN, which was used to deliver the vaccine, any one nation, one vaccine, which means you can take the vaccine any place, anytime, depending on your convenience. Same infrastructure was used to create the one nation, one ration card. So all of this was possible because of a combination of stakeholders, not purely because of government. Yes, they were the catalyst, very important catalyst, but there were also other non-government entities who were involved, deeply involved with these projects, and they continue to be involved.
And also, according to the discussion paper, Anil, India has registered a significant decline in multidimensional poverty in India from, I think we did touch upon this aspect, but I'm bringing it again, from 29.17% in 2013-14 to 11.28% in 2022-23. That is a reduction of 17.89 percentage points. Now, Uttar Pradesh registered the largest decline in the number of poor, with 5.94 crore people escaping multidimensional poverty during the last 9 years, followed by Bihar, 3.77 crore, Madhya Pradesh at 2.30 crore and Rajasthan at 1.87 crore. So how has India addressed with these numbers the regional disparities in poverty reduction, ensuring that progress is equitable across different states and communities?
This is a very good point you brought up. One concern that India had in the last decade and more was parts of India were growing and parts of it weren't. And the parts of it that weren't were being dragged down because of excessive levels of poverty. So what we have seen in these new numbers is poverty was basically concentrated in a few states, which is Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, and to a degree Rajasthan. Now we are seeing these states have all done exceedingly well in lifting people out of poverty. So when you look at it dispassionately, what you see is that the regional inequalities have actually shrunk to a degree because you don't have that many poor people on your rolls anymore. So previously the gap was widening. So now with the basics taken care of, that regional inequality is not as bad as it was previously. It is still a point of concern, but not to the degree that was previously. And just to stay on the link with our previous conversation, to tell you about how access makes a difference. In Uttar Pradesh's case, I will just cite one metric, which is drinking water. Till 2019, with Water Mission was launched. So when it was launched, access to drinking water by tap in rural Uttar Pradesh, it was 1.9% in 2019 for every 1.9% households. Today it is somewhere around 30 to 40% in just a span of 4 years, 3.5 years. So that is how this access has changed lives. And I'm not surprised to see that Uttar Pradesh is similarly one of the key points where we have seen a reduction in poverty. We have seen a similar jump for drinking water in Bihar. So it kind of fits the larger narrative that you provide access, you can address multidimensional poverty.
Add to this, Anil, is that the government of India has made remarkable progress in improving the lives of people, aiming to reduce poverty in all dimensions. Noteworthy initiatives like Poshan Abhiyan and Anima Mukt Bharat have significantly enhanced access to healthcare facilities, leading to a substantial decrease in deprivation. So, other policies that come to your mind at this point of time which has helped elevate poverty from our midst?
See, Rajesh, there are a host of programs. So, like we said at the beginning, the entire approach of multidimensional poverty is that you are able to unbundle the challenge of poverty. Now, this access is not going to be uniform, lack of access, will not be uniform across the country. Topography will influence it, the state you are in will influence it. So when you unbundle a challenge like this into these 11 or 12 parameters, which we have listed a few, education, drinking water, cooking gas, banking, then by targeting them individually through various programs, you are able to address it. So in the case of nutrition, you mentioned Poshan and the anti-anemia strategy. Similarly, on the health side, you had the health insurance, which took off. Today, India has got 400 million people covered under health insurance, which is a huge proportion. Is more than the population of the United States. Say even 10 years ago, they were not covered by insurance. Today, they have. Yes, it may not be the perfect size and the ideal size, but they do have some mitigation. And the way our disease pattern has changed, where non-communicable diseases are dominating the illness pattern, it's this kind of insurance critical. You have to look at this entire approach holistically. You may not be able to identify individually, but collectively they have done dramatic good, and it will work differently for different regions, different states and different locations. So we have to look at this whole battle against poverty in a very holistic sense.
But there have been certain recent decisions such as extending free food grain distribution under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana for another 5 years. Exemplifies government's commitment towards eradicating poverty and, to my mind, addressing the maternal health, clean cooking fuel distribution through Ujjwala Yojana, improving electricity coverage via Saubhagya, and transformative campaigns like Swachh Bharat Mission and Jal Jeevan Mission have collectively elevated living conditions and overall well-being of people, and that too has contributed towards the well-being of the people.
In fact, the same paper has taken the effort and given us a comparison with the National Family Health Survey data of round 3, 4 and 5. So if you look at, say, for cooking gas, the example you cited, the lack of access in the 2005-6 was 75% of the people didn't have. This is now under NFHS, the latest 2019-21 round, this has fallen to something like 43.9% access. So same way, if you look at sanitation, toilets, which is very important for hygiene, the fact it affects everybody's health, particularly maternal health, lack of access has fallen from 70% plus to a little under 30% today. Okay. So you see in every metric, in nutrition that you mentioned, similarly, it was about 60% in the NFHS of 2005, and now it is down to 30% in the latest NFHS. So any metric you look, all these programs are beginning to see an impact. I think that is very important. Previously, you would have scores and scores of programs, but the impact was not visible because of what we mentioned earlier, leakages, lack of focus. But today you managed to unbundle the poverty strategy and thereby able to target particular aspects very aggressively and solve for these problems.
Very well said and well commented. Anil, thank you so much for being part of the discussion on poverty reduction. Hopefully will be inclusive and sustainable in the long run. Thank you for being with Akashvani.
Thank you for having me, Rajesh.
You were listening to a discussion on India's achievements towards Sustainable Development Goals of poverty reduction. The participants were Anil Padmanabhan, economic analyst, and Rajesh Lake, anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.